Welcome, Dolphins fans, to another episode of On the FinSide here with Kat and Paul, doing a live stream again, taking a look at the Miami Dolphins versus Seattle Seahawks contest this weekend. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is fanatic_pick on Twitter. This weekend at noon Central, 1 Eastern, the Dolphins play the Seahawks. And what a team to face here. They're top five in a lot of power rankings. Seahawks are 3-0. Dolphins are 1-2. Looking at some injury reports here, Byron Jones is not going to play in this game, it looks like. Jamal Adams and Jordan Brooks on defense aren't going to play for the Seahawks as well. The major storyline, though, Paul, heading into this is really on the Seahawks side because they've set records on both sides of the ball. Russell Wilson, 14 touchdown passes through the first three games. Most in NFL history. Nobody has ever done that. He's on pace for 75 touchdowns, which obviously isn't going to happen, but hopefully the Dolphins don't keep that up. The other side on defense for the Seahawks, no one in NFL history in their first three games has allowed 1,200 yards passing. And the Seahawks have led up 1,319 yards passing this year. So it's pretty clear cut. Unlike other previous Seahawks teams, Russell Wilson on fire in record amounts, and their defense has been terrible in pass defense over the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that stat line because I actually had it sitting here right in front of me too. The fact that, the defense has allowed 1,300 yards thus far. 1,319, but and Russell Wilson's thrown for, I believe it's 925 yards. So it's almost an aberration that in 2/3 the amount of yards, Russell Wilson's thrown 8 more touchdowns as far as that goes. I think a lot of it speaks to their red zone offense and how they have a propensity to pass the ball a bit. And really they have a good running game as well. But I think part of the problem too is with him getting that many touchdown passes, you inevitably see it. They get away from the pass and go to the run a little bit, which still the 14 touchdowns is an aberration, but also opposing teams are forced to pass the ball more because they're putting so many points on the board. It makes opponents one-dimensional.
Yeah, and looking at their offense too, Chris Carson is now really unexpectedly expected to play in this game because he got rolled up by Tristan Hill for the Cowboys last week on a disgusting play by Tristan Hill. But overall, Chris Carson, 37 carries, 157 yards this year, so nothing too eye-popping, but he's a very talented back. If he plays, he's going to be playing hurt with a high ankle sprain. Carlos Hyde is also hurt. And then after that, you could see DJ Dallas and Travis Homer, 2 former Miami Hurricanes, playing running back there for the Seahawks. So it really depends on that balance. But the big thing, obviously, at the wide receiver position in the main matchup of the game now is you're going to have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, one of the best 1-2 combos in the league, going up now against Xavier Howard and possibly Noah Igbenogany there on the outside.
Yeah. And really those two, as much as I do like Chris Carson, I think he's more explosive than the stat line show. Our longtime listeners know I've always been a fan of Carlos Hyde. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Seattle lives and dies as much as they do on Russell Wilson off of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They are basically, 2/3 of all of Seattle's offense, I believe, at this point. And that is huge. So Miami's got to commit some safety help over the top. That's not a detriment to Noah Igbenogany or a mostly healthy Xavier Howard. It's more of a compliment to Metcalf and Lockett. It's if you can eliminate them or at least reduce their role in this game, that's how you get a chance to win again against the Seahawks.
Yeah, and Paul, you brought up Russell Wilson has thrown for 925 yards. 556 of those yards have come against or have been through DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf in his last 6 games has 597 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns dating back to last year. You take that over a full 16-game schedule, you're talking Julio Jones type of numbers. So this is somebody who is no joke at the receiver position. Tyler Lockett's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons for them opposite him. And he's off to a great start this year with 260 yards and 4 touchdowns. So they really have their work cut out for him. But after that, it gets a little bit more manageable because the next receiver after that is David Moore, 7 catches for 90 yards on the year. So, this is a game, honestly, I'm pissed off about because Byron Jones is not going to play and Xavier Howard is playing and it's still a little bit nicked up. On the outside, I really wanted to see Xavier Howard and Byron against Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in this, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
No, it doesn't. But I think Miami, if they can get creative with their safety coverage, because it like I said before, and you pointed out with some of the stats, it's if you can erase most of the role of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, even if you've got to commit 3 or 4 players to doing so. You commit Eric Rowe and you commit Bobby McCain to helping out over the top, and it's suddenly that Seahawks offense becomes very beatable. It's Russell Wilson can create plays and extend plays with his feet, which is huge for their offense. But that offensive line, as improved as they are, will allow you to get some hits on Wilson, and really his escapability is the only reason why they've only allowed 9 sacks through 3 games.
Yeah, the Seahawks offensive line was known for being terrible when Russell Wilson started his career back in 2012. It stabilized itself a couple years ago when they traded for left tackle Dwayne Brown, a Pro Bowl performer there, and that's going to be an interesting thing to watch too, because as we saw on the Dolphins defense later in the Jaguars game, the defensive ends played a lot better, but partially it's because they had a lead. They were able to tee off on Gardner Minshew. The key here for the Dolphins defense is in the first quarter, in the second quarter, when it's 2nd and 8 and Russell Wilson play actions, that's when you have to get heat on him, because otherwise it's going to be 3rd and manageable, or they're going to get big chunk first down yardage here throughout the game. And that's what the Dolphins have to stop.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Shake Money asked in our chat here if we would spy Wilson. I think intermittently and periodically I would, but overall, my approach to this game and this team is very simple. Like I said already, I'd be more committed to putting resources into trying to erase Lockett, trying to erase DK Metcalf as much as you humanly can. You can't erase them from a game. And then I'd rather they use more creative blitz packages like we started to see last week. Loved watching Grugier Hill run in and run somebody over. Loved watching Jerome Baker blitz. Loved Andrew Van Ginkel coming off the edge and some of the things they were able to do with Sealer. So I'd really be more focused on trying to put pressure than I would spying him and then erasing the other 2 and letting him beat you through his other weapons.
Yeah, I think the difference between Russell Wilson and what we saw with Cam Newton and Josh Allen in the first 2 weeks is Wilson prefers to beat you from the pocket very clearly. And Cam Newton, Josh Allen, they are threats to run the ball 10, 12 times a game. And in doing that, you have to have somebody to spy him. He's mobile, Russell Wilson, but he's not mobile to the point where I think he's going to repeatedly try to tuck the ball down and run 20, 25 yards as a strategy for their offense.
Yeah, as I say, he's mobile, but he's in that Ryan Fitzpatrick school of mobile, I would say.
Well said.
He's got that great escapability factor. He's going to run like hell a few times a game, but usually it's more situational than anything else in that role.
And cheers to everybody out there. Paul and I are having a beer today because we're doing it at a 4:30. It's not like we don't have beers during the week or during the game. Yeah, what are you drinking there, Paul?
I don't know if we're supposed to show this or not, so I won't show you the label on my beverage here. What about yourself?
I'm going with a logboat here. So yeah, I'm liking it so far. So hope everybody else, if you're having a drink at the end of a long week, is as well. So looking here on the offensive side of the ball for the Dolphins, I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick 2 weeks in a row now has been, I'd say last game against the Jaguars, he was very efficient, 18 for 20. And one of those incompletions was a drop pass by Mike Gesicki. And they really basically ran the clock out in the second after they went up 14-0 here. But the week before that, Fitzpatrick did very, very well. I mean, was on a tear, threw for over 320 yards against a very good defense here. Seahawks in the secondary are not a good defense right now, especially with Jamal Adams being out in this game. So it's up to Devontae Parker and to Preston Williams and to Mike Gesicki to take advantage of a secondary that is not only struggling, but is probably missing its best player.
Yeah, and I really want to see Jakeem Grant get used, because I did notice Dallas was tearing apart Seattle, not just running over the top, but also on a lot of those underneath routes. I think those areas where Isaiah Ford and Jakeem Grant could really excel in this game, and the fact that he's going to be Jakeem would be the forgotten guy on the field, and he can roast you deep. Is he going to catch it? We don't know. But at the end of the day, he's going to make you think about it. And if you can get the ball in his hands in short area, he is a threat at any time to take that ball 30-plus yards.
I hope there's no excuse to me from this point on to not have Jakeem Grant in motion on end arounds or faking end arounds 3 to 5 times a game. It just doesn't make sense, because you established that threat last week, and you can bet that the Seahawks are seeing that on film, in addition to having to see what they have to cover with Devontae Parker and with Preston Williams. So we should see on the boundary, the Seahawks you keep those cornerbacks, Shaq Griffin and Trey Flowers, out on the boundary. From a size perspective, they match up, but from a talent perspective, they don't. And that's why they've allowed an average of 440 yards on defense in the passing game this year. But the other thing too is Myles Gaskin has established himself really as the bell cow of this offense. Having said that, as bad as they've been on pass defense, they're really doing well against the run. And we should see players like Poona Ford and Jerron Reed and 6-time Pro Bowler Bobby Wagner up the middle against this Dolphins running game. But you look last week, Ezekiel Elliott, 14 carries, 34 yards only. They're allowing 2.7 yards a carry to opposing running backs this year, the Seahawks defense. So they've got their work cut off for them. The Dolphins do on the ground against them.
They do, but Miami's got some people movers up front now. They've got something they haven't had in a while. And rewatching some footage from this past week's game, I continue to, and I can't believe I'm saying it this way and saying it about a rookie, but I gave Solomon Kinley my player of the game, and I don't give a good goddamn what PFF said. When I rewatched some footage of him from that game, watching the way that not only was he helping Jesse Davis to his right, helping Ted Karras to his left, the way he came off and just, it was like he had eyes in the back of his head when he saw somebody coming through, and he'd light them up and bury them. And I'm very interested to see how he handles the blitz from Seattle, because we all know Pete Carroll gets creative with blitz packages.
Yeah, we reference, honestly, PFF on the show when it makes sense for us to do that, and when it matches what we're seeing too. I mean, Austin Jackson, Solomon Kinley, what else you want him to do except not allow sacks and to create running lanes? I mean, that's what they've been doing. Yeah, they may lose some hand battles, and I think that's what they're judged on a lot. I will say on the other part too that PFF did give Shaq Lawson a very good grade this past week, and when I rewatched the game, I thought he played actually a very good football game, and I think that factors into it a little bit, because Shaq Lawson, he kind of detaches from the rest of the defensive line. So meaning that you've got Wilkins, Gotcha, and Raekwon Davis in the middle, and they're taking up blocks, and Lawson's a little bit more on the edge. He's going up against Dwayne Brown in this game. I think we have to judge Shaq Lawson in a little bit of a different way if he's going to play in that way, because he was holding the edge in that game, and I think he did have a big impact there as the game continued to progress.
Yeah, I think I'm still expecting more out of Lawson and Agba. I mean, I definitely want to see Strobridge finally shake off whatever the hell's going on with him and get some opportunities. And I want to see Zach Sealer. There were plays that Zach Sealer had no business making, and there aren't ones that are going to show up heroically on the stat sheet. I watched him blow through the line on one play, and really, the running back was 2-3 holes over with a wide open space in front of him, and I saw Sealer make an insane dive and bring him down for no gain. When it shouldn't have been a change of direction that was possible, let alone for a man that big. So
Every time, yeah.
It's Sealer on the field is something I really want to see more of.
Every time Sealer's gotten on the field, he's had a great impact. It's not something you see in 3 sacks a game or anything, but he moves well for that 6'7", 300-pound size, much better than Raekwon Davis does. Raekwon Davis, I posted a video as well on my Twitter. Go ahead and take a look at that. That's the role he needs to play. He needs to line up ahead of the center and push that center back. Otherwise, he can't do anything. He can't rush the passer. He can't use that wingspan to get to the outside. Nothing. He needs to push the center back. And when he's in that role, he has value. But other than that, I don't see a lot that he can contribute. Andrew Van Ginkel is somebody that I have just absolutely loved seeing here this past week. He's somebody that he could tee off on the quarterback and do a heck of a job on that. Noah Igbenogany at cornerback. He's somebody I think I put on my Coke bus last week. And I got to tell you, I take that back. I really do, because I've taken him off the Coke, but because at the end of he allowed 1 catch for 2 yards, and there were 2 other ones that he fell for a head fake and could have been touchdowns, but they weren't. And what I really appreciated on that first Dolphins defensive drive against the Jaguars, he peeled off his receiver and stopped Laviska Shenault for just a 2-yard gain, which was his only catch of the game. So if he goes up against Metcalf or Lockett in an extended role, that's really going to be a test. And if he passes that test, huge step up for him.
Yeah, I know you and I had very differing opinions on Igbenogany last week, and I think some of mine was factoring that he's still a rookie. But it's really, if he can get into a little pushing and shoving match and take Metcalf off his route, he's done a good portion of his job. I still want to see him get the help over the top. I still want to see Miami get a little creative with the coverages to kind of frustrate Metcalf, because he is a player that came out a little bit temperamental and emotional. So if you can frustrate him, maybe that'll be a key. We'll see. But yeah, I hate beating a dead horse here, but stopping Metcalf and Lockett is the biggest key to this entire game. No disrespect to, incumbent MVP runner-up Russell Wilson.
Yeah, if you remove Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett from the equation, which I don't see why you would, but
I would.
I mean, it's easier said than done. No doubt. I mean, if everybody could do it, they would. And that's why I wanted to see Byron and Howard play in this game, because they could possibly help neutralize those wide receivers. But other than that, they really don't have a whole heck of a lot. The rest of their offensive line is okay. They've got Greg Olsen and Will Dissly, a decent tight end combo. Their third receiver is David Moore, who's somebody that doesn't strike a lot of fear, but is a good player and had a great catch last week as well. But so that's the major thing. What do you think, Paul, the Dolphins need to do to win this game, and what is your prediction?
I mean, I've already brought up the fact that they need to contain Lockett. They need to contain DK Metcalf, not eliminate them, because that's not going to happen. But aside from that, they need to improve their pass rush a little bit more this week. And really, we need to see that meat monster, or that wall of meat up front. We need to see them blow the Seattle D-line off the ball and give Fitzpatrick the chance to carve apart Seattle's secondary. If you can give Fitzpatrick time in this one, you just have to stop the Seahawks on a few drives, and you can really take it from there.
Yeah, it's the way that both teams have played the first 3 weeks. It looks like the Dolphins are going to have to win a shootout here with Ryan Fitzpatrick and with Russell Wilson. But I also have a feeling too that both teams might try to slow the game down a little bit. Yeah, the Seahawks did win in a shootout against the Cowboys 38-31 last week, but it was only, I think, 9-9 at halftime. So that's not necessarily they wanted something they were getting into by halftime. And it was Dak Prescott against Russell Wilson, two of the best quarterbacks in the league, especially in terms of yardage that they put up. So overall, I think it's going to be a lot more low scoring. I would take the under if I were a betting man on this game. The under is, I think the over under is 53. So overall, I think it'll actually be a close game. I'm going to go with the Seahawks 24-20.
Whew. I thought you were going to go lower than that the way you were talking at first. I'm going to go. Ooh. I'm going to go 42-38 Seattle. Unfortunately, I'm hoping that I got it backwards, but I'm going to go 42-38 in what I think is going to just be a couple of guys chucking the ball down the field in this one.
And I'll tell you this, if the Dolphins can pull this off, this is where the season starts to get fun. Because if they can be 2-2, you take a look at the next several games. They've got San Francisco, who are battered. They've got Denver, who may not even have Drew Lock back. We saw last night where they've got Brett Rippon, who could barely beat the New York Jets. Then they've got the Jets twice, not in succession, but they've got the Jets twice a few weeks later. They've got the Bengals at home. They've got an 8-game stretch starting with the 49ers where if you can go 5-3 or 6-2 in that stretch, it would be hard for them to do that. But if they did, and you're 7-5 or 8-4 heading into the final 4 games of the season when it gets tough, that's where you want to be. But this is the game, Paul, I think we're going to look back on at the end of the year and say, man, if they had that win over the Seahawks and been 2-2, that's the one that really hurt them.
Yeah, and I think they're more capable of getting this win than people give them credit for. There's not a lot you have to eliminate from the Seahawks, and you just have to play kind of mistake-free football. And, I will point out, by the way, it has been announced that Adam Gase is safe in New York for all you Dolphins fans out there. So cheers on that one for me. That's all I got today.
6 personal foul penalties last night from the Jets against Brett Rippon and the Denver Broncos. And that's really what did them in. If they don't get those, then they probably end up winning the game.
Kalen Ballage should have been a 7th personal foul.
Kalen Ballage was the best because Kalen Ballage was on a punt return and just basically ran down there and fell off the mat. And it was a 40-yard return, and it turned out to be a big play in the game too. Adam Gase will always take the player that he's familiar with that's terrible, as opposed to saying, let's put Michael Pirine out there who has potential. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, but I was bummed the Jets didn't win because I don't want them to go 0-16 and be able to get Trevor Lawrence at number 1 or who else might be there, or to get a king's ransom to move down. Another
real take,
yeah.
He could show up and take a 3rd-round defensive tackle, number 1 overall.
Yeah, who also had, I think, 2 of those personal foul penalties, Quinnen Williams. And also the Texans are playing the Vikings. That's another one to look out for. If the Texans go to 0-4, the wheels might start coming off, and the Dolphins could have a top 5 draft pick in this year's NFL draft. Paul, that's going to do it for our breakdown of the Seahawks-Dolphins matchup here at noon Central Time, 1 Eastern. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and on Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL on Twitter. Paul is Fanatic_pick. That's Fanatic with a PH. Have a good night, Dolphins fans.
Take care, folks.